Hello everyone, and welcome to our special PEFC webinar to provide you with an introduction to the PEFC EUDR DDS standard module. This new standard module is being developed by our PEFC Chain of Custody Working Group. The aim of this new DDS is to help our PEFC Chain of Custody certified organisations comply with their EUDR obligations. The PEFC Chain of Custody Working Group has been working for several months on the development of this new standard module, and now it is at the inquiry draft stage. So this means it's time for you to get involved. It's time for you to get access to the draft standard, read it through, and give your feedback and give your comments as part of the 60-day public consultation. Our public consultations are a really important part of the PEFC standard setting process, because while all our standards are developed through multi-stakeholder working groups, it's also really important that we ensure those people that are affected by our standards have the chance to have their say, to give their feedback, so we can really ensure that our standards do meet expectations and needs. So that is where we are now with this standard module. It's at the inquiry draft stage and the public consultation is running. And in fact, that is why we are all here today. So after an introduction from me, I will hand over to Rob Shaw, our Senior Integrity Manager, who will take you through the main part of the webinar. He will introduce you to the DDS inquiry draft, going through its contents and its layout. He'll cover a little bit of the practical application, as well as timelines to formal approval. He'll also touch on certification body accreditation and chain of custody organisation certification. At the end, we'll have a question and answer session. So if you do have any questions as we go through today, just drop them in the Q&A app and we will cover them at the end. We'll try to get through as many of the questions as we can today. If we can't get through them all by the end, we will get back to you afterwards. We are also joined by Hubert Inhazer, who is our sustainable forest management expert. So he will be also available during the Q&A. So if you do have any questions that are a bit more SFM related, he'll be there to cover. So we have everything covered for you today. This webinar is being recorded. We will share the recording as well as the PowerPoint presentation, so you can easily catch up after we've had the webinar today. A little bit of housekeeping from me. So an important question: how do you give your feedback in the public consultation? It's very simple. Go to this URL you see on my screen, fill in the short form. Once you've submitted it, you get an email which gives you a link to the inquiry draft. When you have access to the draft, make sure you read the first page with the consultation instructions, just to make sure that you give your feedback in the correct way, so we know that we can use and respond to your comments. And then most importantly, deadline for your feedback is the 7th of May. So just a couple of weeks away now, so make sure you don't delay. Check out the standard and give your feedback. And then finally from me, how you can keep up to date with the PEFC EUDR process, because we know at the moment a lot is happening. It's happening quickly. There's a lot to stay on top of. Firstly, you can visit our PEFC EUDR website. So this is where we keep all the latest PEFC EUDR information, whether that's public consultations, upcoming webinars. So a great place to start if you want to see what's happening. We also have an FAQ where we add all the questions that we're receiving regarding the EUDR process. So questions from emails, from webinars such as this one, and from outreach. So it's a really great resource for you to use, because maybe you have a question, maybe someone else has already asked it, and the answer is already there waiting for you. To get the most up-to-date information in your inbox, you can sign up to our Technical Matters newsletter. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and X, as we post all our latest EUDR news there. And if you do have any questions or queries, you can email us at eudr@PFC, and our EUDR experts will get back to you. And now I am going to hand over to Rob, who will take us through the next part of this webinar. And I'll see you towards the end for the Q&A session.
That's great. Thanks, Hannah, very much. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, everybody, wherever you happen to be. Just bear with me while I set up my screen sharing. Hopefully you should be seeing my screen.
Looks perfect.
Great, thank you. Okay, so as Hannah was saying, I'm going to give you a brief run through the structure of the DDS modular standard, and then we will move to the Q&A session. So at the moment, as we've said, this is out for public consultation, and we'll share those details with you as to how to access it. This is the EUDR DDS document. I'm not going to take you through the whole document, but I'm just going to highlight the contents and layout. And essentially what we've done is we've taken the due diligence system component of our 2002 standard, and we have aligned it with the European Union deforestation regulations by adding in the terms and definitions and words and phrases from the regulation themselves to allow this standard to be used optionally by PEFC chain of custody certified organizations to be able to make output claims which are considered to be EUDR aligned and therefore of negligible risk, and also hopefully compliant with the legislation, which obviously we cannot guarantee, but we are designing the system to assist with that trade. This standard itself, when it's applied by a chain of custody organization, is intended to be backwards compatible with the 2002 standard. So in other words, if you are using the EUDR version, then that would also be suitable to be able to create non-EUDR outgoing claims also. Obviously, the compatibility does not work the other way around because the 2002 standard does not have the EUDR components in it. Just a note on our 2003 standard, the one for certification bodies, we are anticipating that there will be either no or very few changes to that standard. What we intend to do is to provide guidance to the certification bodies on how they will audit this new modular standard. And I have arranged a dedicated meeting for the certification bodies at the beginning of May. In terms of trademark requirements and logo usage, we still have to decide that, so that news will be released in due course in the summer. The main engine room or important part of the document is obviously the risk assessment component. And so there are extra tables in the EUDR standard compared to the 2002 standard. And those tables take the user through a series of questions. And essentially, we have added in the EUDR requirements from the regulation, which we did not have in the 2002 standard version. So there are now, I think, 6 tables that you have to work through as part of the risk assessment process, dealing with the extra words and terms and definitions that the EU deforestation regulations require. There's extra information in section 8.2 on data and documents, and I will explain that. But essentially, PEFC has decided that the creating and passing on and sharing and uploading of geolocation data, for example, will be the responsibility of certified organizations, and we will leave it to the supply chain to organize and figure out how that is going to work, because it will be different depending on whether you are based inside the European Union or whether you are based outside the European Union. But I have further news to tell you in a moment on technology partnerships. There are several commercial operators who are bringing products to the market, which will help certified organizations in managing all this data. Hopefully most of you will know that if you are an operator or if you are a certain type of trader who is transforming raw material into product, you will need to upload a due diligence statement and related data and information to the European Union Information Centre. And so that's explained in section 9 of the document. And we can obviously get into the detail in the Q&A. So how will this work? PEFC chain of custody organizations who already hold a chain of custody certificate or those applying for chain of custody certification through PEFC will need to ask for or acquire an extended scope to cover this document, this standard, once it is published. Probably if you are located within one of the 27 European Union countries, it will be very much in your interest if you are a COC organization to acquire this extended scope. If you are located outside of the European Union, it will depend whether or not you trade within a supply chain which will be European bound, where the materials or goods will go into the European Union. When you are applying for the extra scope with your certification body, you will be able to choose which of your products or product groups you would like included in the scope. So for example, it could be all of the products that you have in your 2002 scope certification, or it could just be those which you know are EU destined products. One thing to note is that species information, so that's the trade name and also the scientific name, will be required for each product or product group. And if there are multiple species within the product, then the species names will need to be listed. So we will be amending the PEFC International Database in the summer and the autumn to cope with this extra requirement of the species information. It will be mandatory in the EUDR system. So this due diligence system will be able to take raw materials, components, incoming materials into an organization of whichever claim or lack of claim they have on the way in, and then take it through the EUDR Alliance due diligence system process to hopefully come out the other side as negligible risk. And then organizations will be able to make a PEFC EUDR output claim. And I think on the next slide, we'll have some detail as to how that will work. Essentially, the phrase PEFC EUDR will be added to the front of any existing normal PEFC claim structures. And then within the supply chain, you will need to pass on the geolocation data of the areas of harvest in the forest and the harvesting date data, or the time of production data if you are a production unit. And you need to store that information yourself and then also either make it available or pass it on to the customers in your supply chain. So if you are located outside the EU, this information needs to be passed up the supply chain to the operator. In other words, the person who is importing into the European Union and therefore has obligations under the EUDR regulations. Timelines for approval of this document. As Hannah mentioned, the public consultation runs to May the 7th. We then have a chain of custody working group already lined up to meet in Paris on the 9th and 10th of May. And on the 13th to the 17th of May, PEFC is holding its annual Forest Forum Week, including the General Assembly. So what we're trying to do is to get the final draft of the document in front of the directors and the General Assembly, and then a postal ballot with luck will follow in June. So we will hope to release the fully approved and published document sometime in June or perhaps early July. Simultaneously or concurrently, we have applied to Accredia, the Italian accreditation body, who manage PEFC international affairs, and they will be doing what's called an EA1/22 accreditation check. And then I will be able to then talk to the certification bodies. So in terms of rollout to certification bodies and then on to chain of custody organizations, there are 2 webinars planned for May the 3rd. So if you are a certification body attending today, you should have received an invitation to those webinars. If not, please get in touch. And on those webinars, we will discuss how we intend to roll out the accreditation. So the certification bodies will need to acquire an extra scope to deliver this extra modular standard, but we're hoping that will be quite straightforward between the accreditation bodies and the certification bodies. If you are a certification body, please engage with your accreditation body as soon as possible, and you can use the draft document to start amending your systems and then applying to your accreditation body for extra scope. The CBs will then achieve accreditation sometime, hopefully through the summer and into the autumn, and then they will then start offering this service to PEFC chain of custody organizations. We all understand that the timelines here are very, very tight, that there are certain delays within the EU implementation period. The European Union at the moment is insisting that EUDR will commence on the 30th of December this year, and we are all waiting for any updates on that. If you've seen the media, you will see the opinions flying in both directions as to whether there will or will not be a delay. We will try and move all of these things forward as fast as we possibly can. So if you are a certified organization, I suggest you engage with your certification body and try and start discussing the mechanisms by which you will achieve this extra scope. It's still to be discussed with the certification bodies. It may be that achieving this extra scope, for example, could be done in some cases with a desk-based review or a remote audit, but we will confirm all of those details in the next 2 or 3 months. And then we will then be offering training and giving out more information and guidance to certification bodies, to our national PEFC offices and staff, and also to other stakeholders and organizations throughout the summer.
Just as a reminder, 7th of May is the deadline for your feedback. So please make sure you take the time to give your comments. You can always get hold of us. We have our EUDR PFC website. We have our special EUDR@pfc.org email, so you can reach out to us at any time, and we will be here to help. So I don't know, Rob, if you have any last words left in you.
Yeah, my advice to everybody, and it's great to see that we still have 113 people online, so you're all obviously interested and engaged, is get yourselves prepared as soon as possible. Find out as much about what you practically need to do as soon as possible, and then start implementing. And we will be sharing the technology companies and partnering options for you in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And by the time we get to our Paris event, which is only 3 weeks away, wow, the information will be out on the website. And please go and do and search for these companies and have a look at their products. They have free beta versions that you can try, and you can play around with the geolocation creation and have a look at the way that they check for the deforestation and degradation issues for you. Well worth a look. Okay, thanks again.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. And goodbye to everyone, and see you next time. Thank you very much for joining us. Bye.